Most people believe that America was never bombed during World War II, but that's not true. In September 1942, just months after Pearl Harbor, a single Japanese pilot flew across the Pacific Ocean and dropped bombs on the United States. It wasn't Hawaii, it wasn't Alaska, it was Oregon, deep inside the American mainland. His name was Nobuo Fujita, and his mission was so secret that even his own country barely knew it happened. Armed with only two 168-pound incendiary bombs, Fujita tried to set America's forests ablaze, to bring the war home to U.S. soil. This is the story of the man who attacked America, and later returned in peace. Nobuo Fujita was 30 years old, a proud Imperial Japanese Navy pilot with a calm face and unshakable loyalty. He wasn't a fanatic, nor a war criminal. He was a professional aviator who had trained for years to serve his country. When Japan struck Pearl Harbor, Fujita's squadron was already preparing for longer missions, ones that would test the limits of their courage and their machines. He flew the Yokosuka E-14Y Glenn, a small float plane that could be launched from the deck of a submarine, a weapon designed for stealth, not glory. When his commander told him he'd be the first man in history to bomb the continental United States, Fujita didn't hesitate. He bowed and accepted the mission, knowing it might be a one-way flight. Japan was losing ground in the Pacific. Its navy was battered, its resources dwindling. So its military dreamed up strange, desperate ways to strike back. One was Operation Fugo, the use of balloon bombs to reach North America using jet stream winds. But before those balloons ever launched, a far riskier plan was tested, sending a submarine-carried aircraft to bomb the forests of the U.S. West Coast. The idea was simple but brilliant. If they could ignite massive forest fires in Oregon and Washington, they could spread fear, chaos, and force America to divert resources away from the Pacific War. The mission fell to one man, Nobuo Fujita, and his tiny scout plane hidden inside submarine the Fern 25. On a dark September morning, the crew prepared the aircraft on the open sea. Waves crashed against steel, wind roared, and in that moment, history was about to be made. Before sunrise on September 9, 1942, Fujita climbed into his cockpit. His navigator, Shoji Okuda, checked their instruments one last time. Then, the catapult fired. The small seaplane lifted into the cold Pacific air, leaving the submarine behind. Below, America slept. Fujita flew inland over the misty forests of Oregon. At exactly 6 a.m., he released his first incendiary bomb. Moments later, the second. Two bright flashes broke the silence of the forest. The fire should have raged for miles. But a recent rain had soaked the land, and the flames quickly died. Fujita turned back toward the sea, unaware that he had just become the first and only enemy pilot to bomb the U.S. mainland. The American Coast Guard would later find the crater, but no one could believe it was real. When the first reports came in, U.S. authorities thought it was a mistake, maybe a crash, maybe lightning. But the evidence was undeniable. Fragments of a Japanese bomb found deep in the Oregon woods. For a nation that believed it was untouchable, this was chilling. The newspapers called it the Lookout Air Raid. American pilots were scrambled, but Fujita and his submarine were already gone, swallowed by the fog of the Pacific. The attack caused little physical damage, but its psychological effect was massive. If Japan could strike Oregon, what could stop them from reaching California, or even New York? America now knew. The war wasn't as far away as they thought. Weeks later, Fujita tried again. Submarine the I-25 surfaced off the coast once more, this time near Port Orford, Oregon. Once again, the crew assembled the tiny plane on the heaving deck, engines humming under the moonlight. Fujita took off, clutching the imperial flag given to him by his father, a symbol of honor he swore to return with. he released 2 more bombs into the dark forests below. But again, fate had other plans. Rainfall and damp air killed the flames before they could spread. This second strike, like the first, failed to achieve Japan's goal. And soon after, the Ir-25 was hunted by American warships. Fujita's mission was over. He had risked everything, crossed the ocean twice, and changed history in silence. Japan surrendered in 1945. The empire was gone. Cities lay in ruins, and men like Nobuo Fujita returned home in shame and exhaustion. He opened a hardware store, raised a family, and never spoke publicly about Oregon again. He carried a quiet burden, knowing he had attacked a place full of civilians. But time has a strange way of healing wounds. Decades later, the town he once bombed, Brookings, Oregon, discovered his story. Instead of hatred, they reached out in peace. They invited Fujita to visit, not as an enemy, but as a guest of honor. No one could believe it. The man who once dropped bombs on America was now being asked to return. In 1962, Nobuo Fujita, now an elderly man, stepped off a plane in Oregon for the first time since the war. He brought one item with him, his family's 400-year-old samurai sword. He offered it to the town of Brookings as a gesture of apology and friendship. The people accepted it with tears, not anger. Fujita was overwhelmed by their kindness. He later said, "If I had died back then, my soul could never rest. But now, I can finally be at peace." He would return to Brookings several more times, planting trees, visiting schools, and building a bridge between 2 former enemies. When he passed away in 1997, the people of Brookings scattered part of his ashes in the same forest he once tried to burn. His story became a symbol that even after war, forgiveness can rewrite history. The samurai sword Fujita gifted to Brookings wasn't just a token. It carried the spirit of his ancestors. For centuries, it had hung in his family home, representing duty and honor. By giving it away, Fujita symbolically surrendered the legacy of war itself. At the ceremony, townspeople gathered in silence as he bowed deeply, an act of respect that transcended words. Many wept as the once feared Japanese pilot, dressed modestly in a suit, placed the sword in their hands. For a brief moment, enemies from opposite sides of the world stood united, not by power, but by forgiveness. That sword still rests today in the Brookings Public Library, a reminder that peace, too, can leave scars worth remembering. Over the years, Fujita and the citizens of Brookings became unlikely friends. He helped fund student exchange programs, welcoming American teens to Japan. He taught them about the importance of understanding, not hatred. And in turn, the people of Brookings planted a grove of trees in his honor, at the very site where his bombs had once fallen. Children grew up playing beneath those trees, never realizing they stood on what was once a battlefield. Fujita watched this transformation with quiet joy. He said, "War destroyed much. But this friendship rebuilt something greater." From the ashes of destruction, a living symbol of peace had taken root. In 1992, at 85 years old, Nobuo Fujita made his final trip to Brookings. Time had weathered his face, but not his spirit. When he stepped into the library, the sword still gleamed under soft light, untouched, cared for, revered. He touched it gently, smiling. He told the mayor, "I feel like I'm coming home." As he stood among the people who had once feared him, Fujita felt the full weight of his journey, from warrior to peacemaker. He had crossed an ocean twice, once for war, and once for redemption. That day, the town declared him an honorary citizen of Brookings. the same man who had once bombed their forests. Nobuo Fujita passed away in 1997. His ashes were divided, half buried in Japan and half scattered over the Oregon forest he once tried to destroy. There, where bombs once fell, cherry trees now bloom each spring. The townspeople still visit, leaving flowers by a small stone plaque engraved with his name. For them, it's not about the war anymore. It's about what came after. Fujita's story became a legend, taught in schools, told in documentaries, and remembered by both nations. He proved that even the deepest wounds can heal if there's courage to forgive. And in that quiet Oregon forest, peace finally took root.